AITA for telling my sister's boyfriend it's not his business if I don't want to be a stay-at-home mom. I'm 22, the youngest in my family, and I've always marched to the beat of my own drum. My sister, the one this story revolves around, is 28 and has 4 kids. She loves being a mom, and honestly, she's really good at it. She's always wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, and I support her 100%. If that's her dream, I'll cheer her on every step of the way. But she also knows that I don't share that dream. I'm not interested in being a mom right now, if ever. In fact, I've been very clear about this with everyone who knows me. My 2 other older sisters feel the same way, they don't want to be stay-at-home mothers either. This context is important, I promise. Now, my sister's boyfriend, who is 27, has always rubbed me the wrong way. He's one of those guys who seems to have an opinion about everything and doesn't know when to keep it to himself. A few weeks ago, during a family gathering, he randomly asked me when I was planning to settle down. The question caught me off guard because, honestly, it's not something I think about often. I told him I wasn't interested in dating anyone this year, and that should have been the end of it. But of course, it wasn't. He went on to suggest that he could introduce me to one of his friends, who, according to him, was looking for a wife. Not just any wife, but a stay-at-home wife. I laughed a little because it was so ridiculous and told him, no, thank you. But he wouldn't let it go. He wanted to know why I wasn't interested, and after some prodding, I finally told him that I wasn't in a place to date. I explained that my ex-boyfriend, who I dated for 3 years, had cheated on me 6 months into our relationship, and it had left me with some serious trust issues. Instead of being understanding, he scoffed and said, that was in 2023. Don't you think it's time to get back out there? I was annoyed but kept my cool. I told him it wasn't his business and walked away. You'd think that would be the end of it, but 2 days later, he brought up the topic again. This time, he asked me if I ever wanted to be a stay-at-home wife and mother. I told him no. I was very clear about it, I don't want to depend on a man for anything, and I'm not even sure I want kids. For some reason, this seemed to deeply offend him. He got defensive and started talking about how his mother was a stay-at-home wife and mom and how there was nothing wrong with it. I agreed and told him I had no problem with women who make that choice, but it's not the life I want for myself. He kept pushing, saying not all men are the same, and I agreed again but pointed out that not all women want the same thing either. He tried to make it about my sister, saying she wanted to be a stay-at-home mom and wife, and I told him, that's great for her, and I support her, but it's not what I want. At this point, I thought the conversation was over, but then he overheard me talking to one of my friends about getting an IUD. That's when things took a turn for the worse. He confronted me about it, saying I was ruining God's plan by preventing myself from becoming a mother one day. I was honestly stunned. Who does this guy think he is? I told him, very firmly, that whether I want kids or not is none of his business. That seemed to set him off even more. He told me I was disrespecting my body, which, according to him, is God's body, and that I was essentially rejecting my purpose in life. At this point, I'd had enough. I told him to mind his own business and left their house. Now, here's where it gets even messier. My sister called me later that night and said I owed her boyfriend an apology. She told me I shouldn't get the IUD because if I got pregnant, it would be God's plan, and I shouldn't interfere with that. She also said I should reconsider my stance on being a stay-at-home wife and mother. I tried to explain to her that I respect her choices and those of other women who want that life, but it's just not for me. She accused me of looking down on stay-at-home moms, which couldn't be further from the truth. I told her as much, but she wouldn't listen. Thankfully, my 2 other sisters are on my side. They think it's ridiculous that her boyfriend is so concerned about how I live my life. They pointed out that if I don't want to depend on a man, that's my choice, and no one has the right to make me feel bad about it. But the drama didn't end there. Apparently, my sister's boyfriend has been telling their friends about our argument, and now they're involved too. I've received messages from people I barely know, telling me I'm selfish, that I'm disrespecting God, and that I should start thinking about settling down. One of them even said that I'd regret it later if I didn't have kids soon. The cherry on top was when her boyfriend told me I was going to hell for being bisexual. That was the final straw for me. I snapped and yelled, well, I guess your girlfriend is going to hell too because she's bisexual. For the record, he already knows this about her, but I wanted to throw his hypocrisy right back in his face. Now their friends are calling me even worse names, saying I disrespected him and his beliefs and that I should be more considerate. But here's the thing, I don't think I owe anyone an apology. I don't think I was out of line for standing up for myself and my choices. So, AITA for telling my sister's boyfriend to mind his own business and for refusing to apologize. Update 1. After everything that happened with my sister and her boyfriend, I knew it was time to draw a hard line. His constant meddling, disrespect, and overall behavior had crossed so many boundaries that I couldn't see any way forward where I would feel safe or respected around him. I decided I needed to go no contact with him entirely. Even thinking about being around him made my stomach churn. He had this way of invading every part of my life, demanding answers, and twisting my choices into something they weren't. I couldn't keep subjecting myself to that, and I definitely couldn't keep pretending it was okay. So, I called my sister. I wanted to make it clear where I stood and why I was making this decision. I thought, maybe, if I explained it calmly and rationally, she would understand. I told her I had decided to go no contact with her boyfriend because I didn't feel safe around him. His behavior wasn't just rude or annoying, it was intrusive and controlling. Every interaction with him left me feeling drained and violated, like I had to justify every choice I made about my own life. I told her this wasn't negotiable for me. I needed to prioritize my mental health and my boundaries. But instead of understanding, my sister was furious. She accused me of overreacting, blowing things out of proportion, and being too sensitive. She didn't see any of his behavior as a problem. To her, it was just him caring or being protective. She even said I owed him an apology, which was absolutely mind-boggling to me. How could I owe an apology to the man who constantly disrespected me, demeaned my choices, and tried to dictate how I should live my life? I asked her if she thought they owed me an apology, just to see where she stood, and she flat out said no. According to her, I was the one in the wrong for making a big deal out of nothing. And then, of course, as if he had a radar for conflict, her boyfriend overheard our phone call. He jumped right into the conversation, completely uninvited, and started demanding answers from me again. He had this condescending way of speaking, like he thought he was entitled to some kind of explanation for my life choices. He wanted to know why I didn't want to be a stay-at-home mom. I told him it wasn't his business, which it isn't. He then asked why I didn't want to date or marry his friend, as if that was something I owed him an answer to. I told him his friend wasn't my type and never would be, and that he needed to stop involving himself in my life. That's when he dropped the bombshell. He told me that if I didn't stop overreacting, I wouldn't have anything to do with my niece and nephews anymore. That one hit me like a punch to the gut. I love my niece and nephews so much, and the idea of not being able to see them broke my heart. But at the same time, I couldn't let him use them as leverage to control me. That's not love or family, that's manipulation. I told him I was done. For my own mental health, I couldn't keep engaging with him. And then my sister chimed in, saying, "Okay, you made your choice, and we'll make ours." And just like that, I wasn't in contact with either of them anymore. It hurt. It still hurts. I've always been close to my sister, and I adored her kids. But this situation wasn't healthy. My mental and physical health had to come first. I couldn't keep sacrificing my well-being to maintain a relationship with someone who refused to respect me, and if my sister wanted to side with him, that was her choice. I couldn't control her decisions any more than she could control mine. The day after I told them I was done, my dad called me. Apparently, he had found out about everything that happened. My dad has always been a bit of a wild card, but I didn't expect what happened next. He drove over to my sister's house that morning and confronted her boyfriend directly. According to what I heard later, my dad tore into him, yelling at him to back off and telling him he had no right to treat me the way he did. At some point, things escalated into a full-blown fistfight. From what I've been told, my dad won, though honestly, the whole thing just left me feeling more exhausted than anything else. I didn't want violence, I just wanted peace and distance. After the fight, my dad called me to apologize. He said he hadn't realized how bad things had gotten between me and my sister's boyfriend. Then he asked me why I didn't want to be a stay-at-home mom. I hesitated, but I decided to tell him the truth. Growing up, my dad was abusive toward my stepmom. He didn't just yell or get angry, he hurt her. But he never apologized for it. Not to her, not to me. That memory stayed with me, and it shaped a lot of my views about relationships and power dynamics. I told my dad that seeing what happened to her made me determined never to put myself in a position where I was completely dependent on someone else. I needed to know that I could always stand on my own 2 feet. To my surprise, my dad apologized. He told me he never realized how much his actions had affected me. He even admitted that he regretted the way he treated my stepmom. It was a heavy conversation, but in a way, it felt like a small piece of closure. As for my sister and her boyfriend, I've made peace with the fact that they're out of my life. It sucks not being able to see my niece and nephews, and I'll always miss them. But at the end of the day, my mental health and physical safety have to come first. I can't pour from an empty cup, and I won't allow myself to be manipulated or disrespected, even for the sake of family. Update 2. After weeks of silence between me, my sister, and Derek, let's call my sister's boyfriend that, I started noticing a shift in the atmosphere. Mutual friends and family members were coming to me with subtle hints, vague comments, and outright questions about what had happened. Apparently, Derek had been hard at work building his case against me. He'd spun a narrative where he was the self-righteous defender of family values, unjustly attacked by me for simply standing up for what he believed in. According to his version of events, I was the antagonist who couldn't respect his way of life or, more specifically, his vision of how women should live their lives. At first, I tried to ignore it. I figured people would see through his nonsense eventually. But the whispers kept growing louder, and soon I started getting calls and messages from extended family members, asking me why I was so against family values, or why I'd hurt my sister's relationship. It was maddening. Here I was, minding my own business, while Derek was out there poisoning the well. But instead of flying off the handle, I decided I needed to handle this with precision. If Derek wanted to play games, I was going to beat him at his own. It all came to a head during a family dinner my mom decided to host. She's always been the type to play peacemaker, even when it's clear there's no peace to be made. She invited Derek and my sister, probably hoping to smooth things over. I wasn't thrilled about it, but I decided to attend anyway. I knew Derek well enough to predict that he wouldn't be able to resist saying something. And this time, I was ready. As expected, the evening started off tense. Derek kept glancing at me from across the table, likely waiting for the perfect moment to insert himself into the conversation. My sister avoided eye contact entirely, clearly uncomfortable but unwilling to take a stand. And then, as if on cue, Derek found his opening. Someone at the table made an innocent comment about balancing work and family life, and Derek pounced. He launched into one of his trademark monologues about how women are naturally better suited to be stay-at-home mothers and how modern society is ruining the family unit by encouraging women to pursue careers. His tone was smug, self-satisfied, and dripping with the kind of arrogance that made my blood boil. I watched as some of the older relatives nodded along, while others exchanged awkward glances. It was clear that people were uncomfortable but unwilling to challenge him. That's when I decided to act. I let him ramble for a while, waiting for just the right moment. When he paused to take a sip of his drink, I spoke up, my voice calm and composed. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't let my anger show. Instead, I leaned into the sweetness, knowing it would catch him off guard. And it worked. Derek was visibly caught off guard as I began to agree with him, at least on the surface. I made a point to emphasize how important it is for a stay-at-home wife and mother to feel supported, loved, and cared for. I laid it on thick, talking about how a husband should go above and beyond to ensure his wife's happiness, comfort, and security. I painted a picture of an idealized life where the man of the house not only provides financially but also ensures that his wife has the freedom to pursue hobbies, indulge in self-care, and enjoy regular vacations. Derek looked confused at first, unsure if I was agreeing with him or setting him up. His discomfort only grew as I started asking very pointed, very specific questions. I asked if he thought he was providing that kind of life for my sister. Did he make enough money to cover all their expenses while giving her the kind of life she deserved? Could he afford for her to have time to herself, a cleaning service, or even a personal chef if she wanted one? After all, if she was going to give up her career and independence, shouldn't her life be better than it would be if she worked? The table went silent. Derek's face turned red as he stammered out excuses, trying to argue that it wasn't about money. But I didn't let up. I pointed out that if he expected women to give up everything for their families, then the least he could do was ensure they were taken care of in every possible way. Otherwise, it wasn't about values, it was about control. By this point, everyone at the table was staring at him. Some looked amused, others uncomfortable, but no one was rushing to his defense. Derek, for all his talk about family values, suddenly had nothing to say. He tried to change the subject, but the damage was already done. His self-righteous facade had cracked, and everyone could see the insecurity and hypocrisy underneath. Even my sister looked embarrassed, though she didn't say anything to back me up. She just sat there, staring at her plate, while Derek muttered something about how hard work should count for something. I didn't press further. I'd said what I needed to say, and there was no point in dragging it out. The silence that followed was enough to make my point. After dinner, a few family members pulled me aside to tell me they admired how I handled the situation. Apparently, I wasn't the only one who'd been frustrated with Derek's behavior. Some of them admitted they'd been biting their tongues for months, unsure of how to confront him. Others simply thanked me for standing up for myself. It was validating, but also bittersweet. As much as I was glad to have exposed Derek for what he was. Update 3. After the infamous family dinner, I naively thought that Derek might finally let things go. He'd been thoroughly embarrassed in front of everyone, and I figured that would be enough for him to back off and leave me alone. But, of course, Derek isn't the type to take an L and move on. Instead, he doubled down. A week later, I woke up to a long, drawn-out message from him. It was the kind of message that starts off pretending to be polite but quickly spirals into passive-aggressive accusations. He claimed I had humiliated him in front of the family and demanded an apology. But that wasn't all. Derek, in all his audacity, said that if I didn't apologize, there would be consequences. The so-called consequences. He threatened to tell everyone that I wasn't as perfect as I seemed and that I was intentionally trying to break up his relationship with my sister. The sheer nerve of it was laughable. Did he honestly think I'd be scared of his little threats? Did he forget who he was dealing with? I sat there, rereading his message, oscillating between anger and disbelief. But rather than let it stew, I decided to handle it my way, by flipping the script and hitting him where it hurt. I typed out a reply, calm and calculated, but with enough fire to leave a lasting impression. I told him, "Go ahead, Derek. Tell everyone whatever you want. But while you're at it, make sure you include the full picture. Let them know about the time you borrowed $500 from my sister because you couldn't pay your car insurance. Or the time you promised her you'd find a better job but spent 3 months glued to the Xbox instead. And don't forget to mention the time you made her cry because she asked you to help with the dishes after dinner. If we're airing grievances, let's not hold back." I hit send, took a deep breath, and immediately blocked him. I wasn't about to engage in a drawn-out back and forth. As far as I was concerned, I'd said my piece, and that was that. But the fallout from that message was more dramatic than I could have anticipated. At first, there was radio silence. No cryptic messages from mutual friends. No passive-aggressive posts on social media. Nothing. It was almost too quiet, and I assumed Derek was just regrouping, preparing for his next move. But then, out of the blue, my sister called me a few days later. Her tone was hesitant, almost embarrassed, as she explained that Derek had been acting differently. According to her, he had been unusually quiet since our confrontation and, more shockingly, had started helping around the house without being asked. He was picking up after himself, doing dishes, and even mentioning the possibility of looking for a better job. I listened to her, but I didn't let myself feel hopeful. I'd known Derek long enough to understand how he operated. This sudden change of behavior wasn't some miraculous epiphany, it was damage control. He knew he was in hot water, and he was scrambling to save face. Whether it was for my sister, the family, or his own ego, I didn't know. And frankly, I didn't care. I wasn't interested in deciphering his motives or waiting to see if the change would stick. I had bigger things to focus on, namely, my own life. My relationship with my sister, meanwhile, remained complicated. She was still with Derek, though it seemed like my confrontation had forced her to rethink some things. Slowly, we started rebuilding our relationship, on my terms. I made it clear that Derek was not someone I wanted in my life, and she respected that boundary, at least for the most part. We started meeting for coffee or lunch, just the two of us, and those moments reminded me of the bond we used to share. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Derek, for his part, kept his distance. Whether it was because of my message, the family's newfound awareness of his behavior, or his own guilt, I didn't know. What I did know was that I hadn't heard a peep from him since our last exchange, and that was more than fine by me. He could stew in his discomfort all he wanted, I wasn't going to lose sleep over it. For so long, I had let myself get pulled into the chaos, feeling like I had to justify my choices to people who had no right to question them in the first place. But once I stopped caring about their opinions, once I stopped letting their judgment dictate my happiness, I found a kind of peace I hadn't felt in years. Was it painful to distance myself from my sister and her kids? Absolutely. But the truth is, sometimes protecting your peace means walking away from people you love. It doesn't mean you don't care about them, it just means you care about yourself enough to know when to let go. And in doing so, I've built a life that feels authentic, fulfilling, and entirely my own. If Derek thought his threats and manipulation would break me, he was wrong. All they did was reinforce the fact that I'm stronger than I ever gave myself credit for. And if anyone still has a problem with how I live my life, that's their problem, not mine.